From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. Sorrow and anger, that is the overwhelming sentiment in Iran after a U.S. missile strike killed the top general and hero of the Islamic Republic, Qassem Soleimani. People chanted "Death to America" at Friday prayers in Tehran. Many were in tears as they paid homage to the man whom many regarded as the second most important figure in Iran. Soleimani was killed by the airstrike at Baghdad airport, along with the second in command of the popular mobilization units of Iraq. Soleimani and Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis were traveling in a vehicle on the Baghdad International Airport Road when the U.S. missiles struck. Several others were also killed in the attack. It came after a decision by the Iraqi parliament to cease the relationship of cooperation with the United States after its earlier airstrikes on the popular mobilization units last Sunday. The Pentagon later confirmed that President Donald Trump had ordered the strike on Soleimani. Iran's foreign minister condemned the murder.
America's action, without any doubt, is an act of state terrorism and a violation of Iraq's sovereignty, which is murdering people who dedicated their entire lives to fighting tyranny, oppression, terror and extremism. He and Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, his martyred comrade, had an outstanding role in the combat of Iraqi and Syrian people against the Islamic State group. Perhaps America's action was a response to the pain that this great man had inflicted on them. Qassem had destroyed what America had built and nurtured, that is, IS, with the assistance and struggles of the peoples of Syria, Iraq and the region. This was a heavy blow for the United States. The pure and holy blood of Qassem Soleimani will definitively make the tree of resistance more robust and make Iranian people more united. It would also make US policies more scandalous and less effective than before.
Hundreds of mourners gather outside Soleimani's home in the southeastern Iranian city of Kerman. They paid tribute to the man they regarded as a hero of the oppressed, and said his death will only strengthen their resistance.
Qassem wasn't just a warrior or commander. He was the hope of the oppressed people all around the world.
The United States must know that this very day, as we speak, new Qassem Soleimanis are being born.
The Hezbollah movement in Lebanon has strongly condemned the killing of Qassem Soleimani. In a statement read out on the Al-Manar TV station, the organization's leader Hassan Nasrallah expressed his condolences to the people of Iran. He also paid tribute to Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, the leader of Iraq's Kataib Hezbollah movement, who was killed in the attack alongside Soleimani. He said the U.S. killers will not achieve any of their goals with this crime and that resistance fighters will carry on the work of the Iranian leader. From Gaza, the Palestinian movement Hamas added its voice to the condemnation.
The Islamic resistance movement Hamas condemns the crime committed by the United States, the assassination of Major General Qassem Soleimani, one of the most prominent Iranian military leaders who had a clear and prominent role in supporting the Palestinian resistance and Palestinian cause. This crime reflects the American recklessness in the region and its violation of state sovereignty and its role in increasing tension in the region only to serve the interests of the Zionist enemy.
Meanwhile, the State Department has urged U.S. citizens to leave Iraq immediately. The U.S. said there was tension in the region and blamed it on Iraq's popular mobilization units. They were protesting at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad over a recent airstrike that killed dozens of its members. And China urged the United States to remain calm and exercise restraint to avoid any further escalation of tension.
China has always opposed the use of force in international relations. We advocate that all sides should earnestly respect the goals and principles of the Charter of the United Nations and the basic norms of international relations. Iraq's sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity should be respected. The stability and peace in the Middle East and Gulf region should be maintained.
In the UK, the head of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, said this attack was an extremely serious and dangerous escalation of conflict. He called on the UK government to urge restraint from the United States and avoid global consequences. Earlier on Thursday, the Turkish parliament passed a bill to send troops to Libya to support the United Nations-backed government in Tripoli. Libya's government of national accord has been under sustained attack since April by military strongman General Khalifa Haftar. He is backed by Turkey's rivals Saudi Arabia, Egypt and the United Arab Emirates. There are no details on the scale of the potential military deployment and no date has been set either. And following the approval of sending Turkish troops to Libya by the Turkish Congress, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, warned Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to not interfere. According to the White House, Trump said that foreign interference is complicating the situation in Libya. The forces of General Haftar, supported by the United States, along with Egypt and Saudi Arabia, have had complications to advance on Tripoli after months of an unsuccessful siege. All thanks to the resistance of the forces which support Fayez al-Sarraj, the government recognized by the United Nations and supported by Tripoli. Meanwhile, Greece, Cyprus and Israel have signed a deal for the so-called EastMed pipeline project to ship gas from the eastern Mediterranean to Europe, despite Turkey's hostility to the agreement. The move comes amid tensions with Turkey over its activities in the area and a maritime deal with Libya, expanding Ankara's claims over a large gas-rich area of the sea. The 2,000-kilometer pipeline will be able to carry between 9 and 12 billion cubic meters of gas a year, from offshore reserves held by Israel and Cyprus to Greece and other southeastern European countries. We have more stories coming up, so don't go away.
Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomen. Monday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The Revolutionary Force of the Commons, the FARC political party in Colombia, has denounced the murder of a former combatant in the Cauca department. Benjamin Banguera Rosales was undergoing a process of reintegration when he was killed in the municipality of Guaypi. This marks the first murder of a former FARC member in 2020. According to the United Nations, since the signing of the peace agreement, more than 170 members of the group have been assassinated. Opposition parliamentarians in Chile will present a constitutional indictment against Metropolitan Mayor Felipe Guevara for the heavy repression of the Carabineros in recent weeks at Dignity Square in Santiago. After ordering police operations with more than 1,000 members of the Carabineros to prevent demonstrations, accusers now point at Guevara and say that he will have to respond for the application of this measure. They reiterate that the order now only contributed to increased confrontations and promoted violence in the capital. Guevara and the chief of the Carabineros, General Mario Rosas, are being questioned by political parties and social organizations which have demanded the resignation of the two of them. The Bolivian president Evo Morales has presented the Argentinian legal team that will help defend him in the face of accusations from the de facto authorities who seized power in November's coup. The team includes two eminent jurists, Gustavo Ferreira and Raúl Zaffaroni. Morales said their contribution would be invaluable, not only to defend him against bogus accusations of sedition, but also to defend the constitutional order in Bolivia and, above all, the people of Bolivia.
I'm very happy to have these great professionals, great defenders of rights. We will always be on the side of truth and justice, and it is an honor to have this kind of professional to support our legal defense. And it's not just for Evo, but above all, defense against injustice, a defense of the humble people. Because our process of change has always defended the humble people of Bolivia. So thank you very much for your support in carrying on this defense of our movement.
One of Morales' legal advisors, Ferreira, said there is no constitutional order in Bolivia, and he pointed out that the country would enter a constitutional vacuum on January 22nd, when the mandates of both President Morales and the current Legislative Assembly come to an end.
In this sense, the Bolivian Assembly has still neither accepted nor rejected the President's resignation. Therefore, constitutionally, the President of the plurinational state of Bolivia is the person who is with us here today. We think it's very important for everyone in Latin America to take note of this, because it will be a very bad precedent of a kind we've never seen before. I would like to add that the Bolivian Constitution of 2009 makes clear that all the actions of anyone who usurps power or who assumes functions which are not theirs are entirely null and void.
And Raúl Zaffaroni said it was incorrect to say that Evo Morales has the status of a refugee in Argentina. He said that at least until January 22nd, he enjoys the immunity that corresponds to a head of state.
No extradition request has been presented to the Argentinian justice system. The only thing we have seen is an arrest warrant, not issued by any judge, but by two prosecutors for the supposed crime of sedition. Sedition is by definition a political charge, and you cannot request extradition of anyone for a political crime. That is clear in the extradition treaty that we signed with Bolivia in 2013, and which I think was signed by President Morales. And those are also the international norms for extradition.
Meanwhile, Mexico's president has pledged to stick by his government's decision to give asylum to 9 people in Mexico's embassy in Bolivia. This after Bolivia's de facto government expelled the Mexican ambassador to La Paz over the asylum spat.
We cannot falter in this matter of giving protection to persecuted politicians who receive an asylum in our embassy. If we turn these people in, we will be ending the right of asylum that is sacred for Mexico. It is a matter of principle. We will not fall for any provocation. It's to defend our foreign policy's principles.
The Argentine government has announced it will freeze public transport tariffs in Buenos Aires for 120 days. During these 3 months, President Alberto Fernández says his government will reassess the prices of public transport, not just in the capital, but across the country. The government has also suggested to provincial leaders to follow the capital's example and freeze their tariffs in their respective areas. In other news, Guyana's Elections Commission has posted the revised voters list to allow for public scrutiny ahead of the March general elections. Just over 661,000 people are eligible to vote, and the list will be displayed for 21 days. In June, the Caribbean Court of Justice upheld a no-confidence motion that was passed in government in December 2018. The country's constitution says that once this occurs, the government must resign and elections be called within 3 months. The CCJ also ordered that the head of the commission resign, a new chairman be sworn in, and a new voters list be released before citizens head to the polls. A pastor in Trinidad must explain his wealth to a magistrate after police seized $4.3 million in $100 bills from his possession. Longdon Vale preacher Vinworth Dayal went to a financial institution to change the old $100 notes to polymer ones as stipulated by the government. Citizens were given a December 31st deadline to do so. The government said the move was to combat money laundering, counterfeiting, tax evasion, and other criminal activities. Jamaica's opposition leader says he will be advocating for a 60% increase in the minimum wage, which stands at $53 a week.
With the significant fall in the value of the Jamaican dollar and the rise in the price of basic items, the low wages keep many workers poor, as does the increasingly widespread practice of treating many full-time workers as contract workers and thus deny them the fair wages and benefits to which they would otherwise be entitled. Today, I'm giving notice that the opposition will be demanding and fighting for the minimum wage to be increased to $12,500.
The Colombian government has agreed to an increase of just 6% in the minimum wage for the coming year. That is well below what workers were demanding.
Around 10 million Colombians waited anxiously for the increase in the minimum wage for 2020. They were hoping that tripartite meetings between the unions, businessmen and the government would give the green light to the workers' demand for at least $305 a month, which would be an increase of 8.11%. But once again, the negotiations failed, and the government decreed an increase of just 6%, taking the minimum wage to $298 a month.
Wages are still rising below the rate of productivity, and the minimum wage is a wage that doesn't cover the cost of basic needs. Colombia is living through a critical situation due to the low purchasing power and the sluggish dynamic of the domestic market. If you want the economy to grow, the most important factor is the need for demand to increase, to raise people's incomes, to generate a rise in production.
Workers argue that this government is on the side of the businessmen and doesn't give importance to the difficulties faced by workers who earn the minimum wage. They struggle to survive, especially if the family has more than 2 children and they have to pay for rent and schools. They say this increases inequality and doesn't boost the economy.
This is a very low wage, and it shows that the government always sides with the businessmen, as they did with the tax reform that was a big gift to employers. And now they are giving them a new present and not allowing wages to become too expensive, as the businessmen put it for us. This not only frustrates people's hopes of earning a little more, it also shows that we won't be able to reactivate the economy.
Around 10 million Colombians depend on the minimum wage. They suggest that businessmen and the government put themselves in their shoes and try to live on such a low income. They want them to think not only about their own profits, but also about their workers' welfare.
It is unfair that we get that minimum readjustment, while members of Congress earn very well and also get a pension for life. It's unfair that they earn millions and the Colombian people don't earn even enough for the basics.
This is really a mockery of the people, because they don't listen to the people. They don't know who they are governing or where they are. I say that they truly have to hear the people. This minimum wage is a disgrace. I don't know anyone who can live on this minimum wage.
While businessmen insist that a big effort was made to increase the wage and purchasing power of the population, economists predict a rise of 6% or more in the prices of basic goods, as well as rents and penalties. And this will just erode further the income of the 10 million workers whose only income is that minimum wage.
We're taking one last break, but stay with us.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur. Thank you for joining us again. Protests against the French government's plans to push through an overhaul of the pension system have broken national records for the longest ever transport strike. On their 30th day of protests, demonstrators clashed with police in several parts of Paris as they marched through the capital. Thursday's strike action saw protesters block 2 bus depots, while riot police used tear gas to disperse them. Previously, President Emmanuel Macron said he wants his government to quickly find a compromise with unions without departing from the principles laid out by ministers. But citizens have fiercely rejected the move, with unions initiating protests since December 5th, crippling public transport. A Belgian judge has suspended the extradition case for former Catalan regional president Carles Puigdemont and his health minister. Puigdemont's lawyers said the European arrest warrant leveled against the men by the Spanish court should now be rejected. Both Puigdemont and his health minister Tony Comín were elected members of the European Parliament in May last year. Due to this, the European Court of Justice ruled last month that they enjoy immunity from prosecution, unless Spain requests this be removed and their fellow MEPs agree. Courts in Belgium, Germany and Scotland have so far refused to extradite Puigdemont and other senior Catalan politicians, sought by Spain for their role in the 2017 independence referendum. Japanese prosecutors have searched the home of Carlos Ghosn, the fugitive former executive of Nissan. Officials from the prosecutor's office went to his house in Tokyo 3 days after the executive arrived in Lebanon, saying he had escaped from justice in Japan. The executive, who holds Lebanese, French and Brazilian nationalities, was facing trial for misuse of company funds. He maintains he has been the victim of persecution. The French government has said it will not extradite Ghosn if he arrives there.
If Mr. Ghosn arrives in France, we will not extradite Mr. Ghosn because France never extradites its nationals. We will apply the same rules to Mr. Ghosn as to the man in the street. But that does not prevent us from thinking that Mr. Ghosn shouldn't absconded from the Japanese justice. Simply, it's the same rights for everyone. French nationality protects.
And Lebanon received an Interpol arrest warrant on Thursday for Ghosn, but Lebanese judicial sources have said he cannot be extradited there. Meanwhile, in Beirut, a doctor and the chief of security of the building have entered a house that reportedly belongs to Ghosn. The doctor said to media that he was there on a matter of health and the doctor of Ghosn's wife. Thailand has kicked off 2020 with a ban on single-use plastic bags. Several major mall operators and the popular 7-Eleven convenience stores will see customers instead paying a small fee for a reusable bag made of a cloth-like fabric. Thailand is one of the largest contributors to ocean pollution, with citizens going through an average of 8 every day.
While the move by retailers was hailed by environmental groups, they say it's not enough to solve the plastic crisis, as the country will continue to produce plastic packaging and lacks a proper waste management policy. Now to South Africa. The annual Batucada football tournament in the township of Botshabelo once again thrills citizens and football fans of the region. The event becomes more popular every year, as this time 32 teams compete for the over $7,000 prize. More than 20,000 people flock to Botshabelo to watch the matches. The 2-week-long tournament also helps boosting the ailing economy of the gang-ridden township.
This tournament has encouraged us to pursue our dreams because we like football.
So I think the importance of this tournament is really to bring the disadvantaged community and the disadvantaged boys who have talent.
The talent is massive, but the opportunities were very scarce. So I thought
we organize our team starting from January.
It will eliminate what is happening around, the killings, the rapings and all the stuff.
And with that, we end our news brief. But remember, you can find all of our stories by checking our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to also join us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.